Hello and welcome. In this series, we are looking at addiction, and this is episode 3. And today we're going to be looking at what is addiction and who does it affect. We're going to look at a couple definitions before we dive in. If we look at Oxford Languages, addiction is the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Merriam-Webster says it's a compulsive, chronic, psychological, or physiological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity having harmful physical, psychological, or social effects and typically causing well-defined symptoms, such as anxiety, irritability, tremors, or nausea. Upon withdrawal or abstinence, the state of being addicted. 1 John 2:16 says this. It says, "For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world." Addiction affects the brain's reward system, leading to changes in brain chemistry and behavior. It is a relapsing condition, meaning that individuals may experience periods of recovery, but are at risk for relapse. Throughout this series, I'm going to talk about two types of addiction. So we're going to explore substance addiction and we're going to explore behavioral addiction. So when you think of substance addiction, I want you to think of alcohol, drugs, things like cocaine, opioids, nicotine. And when you think of behavioral addiction, I want you to think about things like gambling, gaming, internet, shopping, sex addiction, lust, those types of things. Some of the causes and risk factors are important to note as well. So we want to think about genetics, right? So family history increases risk. Our environment, so peer pressure, trauma, abuse, stress. We're going to think about someone's story, right? Where they come from. Mental health plays a part. So anxiety, depression, PTSD, any mental health diagnosis could play a part in someone being more at risk for addiction. And then brain chemistry. So the dopamine reward system in our brains are altered when we are addicted to something. So my summary is that addictive behavior is the habitual choice that a person makes, even if it causes personal harm to others, or to the flourishing of their life or the life of someone else. I want you to think about a child who touches something hot, right? Or a young adult who maybe steals for the first time and realizing the consequences says, "I'll never do that again," right? A person who is struggling in addiction continues to make choices because of their need, which comes from their brain, and this overcomes their self-control to stop. This is when you are down in a city, maybe downtown, and you see someone walking barefoot who has let all self-care go. And you look at them and you think, how could they get to that point, right? This person has one goal, and that is to get their next fix. But then once this person is sober and working towards healing, they themselves can't even believe that they were once in that situation. When you see people in this state of mind, it's so easy to be discouraged, judgmental, horrified, even alarmed, right? Fear can come when we see a person in this type of circumstance. I get to work a lot with men and women that are coming out of addiction, who are experiencing hope and healing, but they themselves, after they begin opening up and allowing some of their walls to come down and they start to build trust, they themselves cannot believe that they were ever once in that state. When you think of addiction, it's common for people to immediately think about the substance abuse, when the reality is that addiction is a condition that can affect anyone. Addiction can look like gambling, pornography, sex, the need for attention or approval, cell phones, shopping, eating, workaholic, self-harm. The list goes on. This does ask the question, is a substance abuse different than any other addiction? And the answer is yes, it is different in some ways, but also in some ways the same. We'll touch more on this as we go. Where we can go wrong is judging someone else who is barefoot, right, in the street, shouting profanities because of their painful dependence on drugs, when we ourselves can find ourselves doing things like ignoring our kids and our family because we're doom scrolling, or we're playing video games for all hours of the day, or we're a workaholic, or we're addicted to porn, and we're justifying this behavior because in our head we're thinking, well, it's not as bad as those people. The addiction may look different, leading to different consequences, but the cause of the addiction, the part that is broken inside of us, is often similar and can manifest itself differently for different people, especially when we add trauma, when we add our childhood, our circumstances, our stories, and where we came from. Spiritually, anything that distracts us or keeps us from God can be equally damaging. And often, if we pattern our lives in this way, one addiction can lead to another and can gradually get worse. I believe every person is at risk for addiction in their lives. Yes, we know that generational addiction, upbringing, personal stories, circumstances can put someone at higher risk, but this is not always the case. I know of stories of people who had healthy childhoods with very involved, intentional parents who they themselves found themselves deep in addiction. Addiction does not have a type, and the enemy knows if he can turn our hearts and our eyes off of Jesus, we will suffer. Matthew 26:41 says, "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." And 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." The authors of these scriptures are saying to be watchful, right? To be intentional with the decisions that we make in our life. That our flesh is willing. In other words, our flesh is saying yes, and that there is an enemy who is prowling, looking for someone to destroy. These are meant to warn us of danger and to remind us that we are called to live our lives intentionally, watchful and examining so that we can experience life to the fullest. John 10:10 says that the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life. And this is my favorite part, and life to the full. You know, we can look at this scripture and we see the warning of the enemy, and then we see that Jesus comes to give life, right? But it doesn't end with, I have come to that they may have life. It doesn't end there. It says, and have it to the full. And what is so powerful about this message is that Jesus didn't come to give us life so that we would just be limping through, barely making it, barely not relapsing, right? Or barely getting through whatever is going on with us emotionally, mentally, physically. Jesus has come that we would have life and have it to the fullest. He wants us to experience a full and flourishing and a whole life. Even with stories of pain, he wants to bring healing and hope and remind us that we have a hope and a future in him. Romans 12:1-2 is my prayer for this series. It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." I see the scripture come alive in the work that I do. I think it's easy to judge people with substance addiction, all the while neglecting the behavioral addictions in our own lives. I believe we can learn the most valuable ways to walk with Jesus through those who have experienced deep suffering through addiction, who have come out on the other side. These men and women who are experiencing healing through programs and the kindness of community have some of the richest faith I have ever seen. They are deep in scripture. They are deep in confession because they know secrets make you sick, healing and mentorship. Most of them have little when it comes to possessions, but are rich in faith because God is all that they have. This is a lesson to those of us with much. The more we have and cling to, the harder it is to need Jesus and the harder it is to cling to him, which will make it easier to cope with things that are offered by the world. James 2:5 says that God has chosen the poor, and I also see this as the suffering, to be rich in faith and heirs to the promised kingdom. Our faith, our self-control, who we are as people will deepen and be so rich when we cling to Jesus over anything else. If this has spoken to you today, I pray you take the brave next steps to confess what is happening in your heart and in your life to a trusted person who will help you find the support that you need so that you too can experience freedom. Thank you.